What's up, you guys? Chef Frank back again with a pizza dough focaccia recipe here. These are the ingredients that I'm using here today: some olive oil, flour, maple syrup, salt, yeast, and some water. I'm going to need a bowl. I'm mixing it today by hand, but you can also use a mixer, which I do have, but I know everybody does not have a mixer, so I'm going to mix it by hand today in the bowl. So first, what you're going to need is your bowl, and then I put a few cups of flour in there. I put about 5 cups, I believe, in there. And don't forget, the recipe is going to be down below in the description as well. It's quite a bunch of flour here, but it makes a good amount of dough, so that way you can freeze a good amount of it as well for the future. Next, I just put some salt in there. And the salt is really cool because you definitely need it to flavor the dough. You can't go without it. There is a myth that salt kills yeast, but that's only in large amounts. And then next is the yeast. I'm using, I believe I'm using dry active yeast here, so I'll also put that measurement down in the recipe below. Absolutely. And I'm just incorporating everything here. I'm mixing up all my dry ingredients to make sure everything is incorporated thoroughly here. Next, I have my water, some warm water, about 2 cups, and I believe I'm adding a 1/3 cup of oil, I believe. And then I'm adding in some maple syrup. The syrup is the sugar piece of it. You can absolutely use sugar, you can use honey, you can use whatever sugar that you like. I'm using maple syrup because I think it's more flavorful and it's low glycemic. Alright, I'm just mixing everything up here. Oil and water typically don't mix, but I wanted to mix everything up as a liquid so that way everything can be poured out together into the flour mixture. And I'm just pouring everything over my flour mixture with the salt and the yeast. Alright, and I'm just mixing everything in. Now, if you do opt to use sugar over maple syrup, just make sure you mix the sugar into the flour like I did with the yeast and the salt. And right now I'm just binding all the ingredients together. I'm not being too aggressive with it. And now I'm kind of being a little bit more aggressive here, because I'm preparing the dough to knead the dough now, and I'm transitioning out. I'm kneading the dough in the bowl, and now I'm going to sprinkle some flour on my work surface to knead the dough further. And the reason why we're kneading the dough is to strengthen the gluten, to create the proteins and strengthen the gluten. If you have poor gluten creation here, then you're not going to have a good dough at all. And you'll see here in a second as I stretch out the dough, and you'll see that there's a hole inside of it. So I have poor gluten, poor protein development here. Okay, so that means I need to knead the dough some more. You add flour as needed for your workbench because you don't want the dough to stick. And then now eventually you'll have a strong dough. You can see it's not a hole or it's not stretching apart there. So yeah, and you can see how smooth it is here. So next we gotta let it proof for a little bit. And what I did is I formed it into a little ball or a bowl here. And put a little bit of oil in the bowl so that way the dough does not stick. That's very important, okay? Because the dough will stick to the bowl or to the top of whatever that you're going to seal it with, whether that's going to be this lid that I'm using here or like foil paper or saran wrap. So we proof this. I proof this in the oven. I don't turn the oven on at all. I just let it sit in the oven since it's kind of like an insulated space. And I let it proof for about an hour. You can do it for 45 minutes, and then this is when it has doubled in size. Here you can see it has doubled in size. I have a freezer bag here that I'm going to use because I'm going to split the dough in half, and I'm going to save some of the dough and put it in the freezer. And this is kind of fun. You can kind of punch down the dough a little bit like a pillow. I like that part of the recipe here. But you can see how smooth the dough is right now. Look how smooth that looks. Very soft, very workable dough. And now I'm just splitting it in half with my bench scraper. You can absolutely use a knife. I'm using a bench scraper right here. Okay. And I'm just cutting it in half, and I'm going to put this half of the dough in my freezer bag here to put it in the freezer so I can use it at a later date. You can store the pizza dough up to 6 months in the freezer, so that's awesome. And you can have pizza dough ready to go on Friday night to make a good pizza yourself without even going to your local shop or to ordering pizza online. You can make your own personal pizzas at home. And I'll go through how to make a pizza here, but this is the pizza dough recipe. But I wanted to add a 201 here. I made a focaccia with the rest of the pizza dough, and that's typically what focaccia is. So I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, I'm just storing my pizza dough in the freezer. And to be honest, I use that pizza dough like the next day. So next you're going to need a sheet pan. Drizzle some olive oil on top of that, and make sure you evenly distribute it throughout the sheet pan as well. Okay, you start stretching out your pizza dough, the remaining half here. Okay, and then what I did was I moved my sheet pan out of the way. I brought my rolling pin out here. I have a steel rolling pin. Added some flour. And I'm trying to do my best on camera here as the camera's in front of me. But you kind of want to roll it out in a little bit of a rectangle shape here. Alright. Prepare it for the sheet pan. Okay. And I put the sheet pan over top of the dough just to make sure I got the right shape that I wanted. Okay, now I put the pizza dough in the pan here, and I'm stretching out on the corners. And it's not going to be perfect, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect here, because what I'm going to do is I want to put it back in the oven to proof some more. I want the dough to be a little bit more puffy for when I do bake this. Okay, so I brought it out out of the oven here after 30 minutes of proofing, just letting it sit. Okay, and what I'm doing is just essentially making some holes in the dough. Okay, these are going to be the little holes or crevices rather, where I'm putting some rosemary in there. Okay, for the focaccia. Alright, and then I'm going to spread some olive oil over top. Okay, as you can see, you see those little holes that I created there. I'm putting those pockets. Making sure there's olive oil in there and the rosemary as well. And I'm going to sprinkle some sea salt right over top of that too. Okay, once you're done with that, you're ready to go. You're ready to bake this. You want to put this in the oven 350 to 400 for about 20 to 25 minutes depending on your oven. Okay, looks beautiful. And you can put anything on top of your focaccia, really. You can do anything you want. It's like pizza, obviously. So after that time frame, I took it out of the oven. This took about 20 minutes. I took it out of the oven. I should have probably taken it out a little bit earlier there, but you can see how it's splitting away from the pan a little bit. But yeah, this is what it looks like when you do take it out. Great color, great crust, very tasty. Adding the sea salt on top adds a great addition of flavor for popping out the rosemary as well. This is great for an appetizer. So I hope you guys give this a try. Thanks you guys for watching again. See you next time.